often when there's a new technology, the first way of thinking about the new technology is kind of an analogy to previous technologies or too much like previous technologies. And so I think it's not an accident that the chatbot emerged as the first application, the consumer chatbot, because it's like social media or it's like Google, and people are using it as a substitute for those things. But I think as often happens with new technology, when it's used as an analogy or drop-in replacement to previous technologies, that's only a tiny fraction of its power.
Right.
And so I think the ultimate power of AI, which is taking a little longer to emerge because it's a new thing, because it's a totally new way of using the technology, is kind of enabling the businesses and the economic activities of the world.
Yeah.
And so I think in contrast with some of the other major companies in this space, which are consumer companies or are clearly signaling presence in a consumer direction, Anthropic wants to be the company that serves enterprises and serves business use cases.
Love that.
And so, you know, we are scaling up in this area. You know, I think as you mentioned, you know, code is maybe the first area to show, to kind of show the magnitude of business use cases. I'm, on one hand, incredibly excited about code. On the other hand, I actually think the lesson from it isn't that code is a uniquely compelling application of AI. I mean, it's really compelling, but I think what's going on is that coders, people who write code, are people who adopt technology quickly and people who are close to the LLM revolution. So the diffusion of the technology has been faster. But what that shows to me is that the incredible value we've seen in code, we could see in all of these other areas. It's just there's more friction.
That's right.
And we have to get over this friction. And so a lot of what we're thinking about is, yes, how to expand on the code side, but also how to reduce the friction in areas where there's huge potential, right? Areas like financial services, areas like sales and marketing, areas like you know, pharmaceutical and biomedical, areas like legal, productivity, it really manufacturing, it really runs across the board. And I think we're held back not by the power of the technology to change these things, but by needing, you know, just needing to solve all the practical problems that comes up when there's a big enterprise that does something other than AI and somehow has to mesh or integrate itself with the new AI technology.
Is there like a moment where you were like, you saw something in Claude Code and the way developers were using it that it became the big thing? And do you see that type of pattern emerging in the next couple of big use cases?
Yes, so the moment was actually before the launch of Claude Code. So early in 2025, I had kind of given a directive to the company to say, hey, we should try to use our own AI to make ourselves more productive, right? We should try to accelerate ourselves with the technology. And so, you know, I didn't want to tell people exactly what they should build, because that doesn't work very well. You know, I said experiment with things. And so there were a number of experiments, and one of them was, you know, this internal tool. It had some other name that I've forgotten by now, but it was basically this command line tool that, you know, you could use to write for Anthropic engineers and researchers to write code. And I noticed that, you know, this tool was presented, and then within a week, like 100 employees within Anthropic used it. And then like within 2 weeks, like, you know, 500 and like half of Anthropic was using it. And I'm like, people really seem to like this. It's being adapted really fast. That we were then about to release Claude 3.7. And, you know, I looked at it and I was like, hey, can we just release this publicly? And, you know, there were various reasons. It was like, oh, you know, we'll have to. And I'm like, this seems really compelling. You know, I think in general you shouldn't have a prescriptive view on, you know, you shouldn't have a roadmap and say follow the roadmap. If something is getting product market fit, including internal product market fit, like that's the best signal, and you know, nothing else matters, right? Like you know, that's the thing that's going to succeed. Now, if you're worried about it from a safety and moral perspective, that's another thing. But if it appears safe and it has product market fit, even internal, you should make it go as fast as possible. And so that's what we did with Claude Code, and the external reaction was very much like the internal reaction that we saw to it.